All right, so there's lots of guitar terms out there, and so maybe next time you hear one, instead of being a person who just nods along and goes like, oh yeah, I know what that is, and then maybe forgetting to ever look it up, this is for you, to tell you what all those terms are, some of them. Anyways, so let's get started. First is a chord, not to be confused with a cable, or possibly a lead, if you're English. A guitar cable, guitar lead, this is not a chord. It's spelled differently. A chord is any collection of notes sounding together on the guitar. So you take the most basic thing in the world, a G chord. It's a bunch of notes that you're playing together. C chord, there's variations upon thousands of what all the chords is. And so it's just any collection of notes. That's what a chord is. There's different ways to play a chord. You could just strike a chord just all at once. Or you could do what's called rake a chord, where you just rake your pick across the strings. Hear the difference? Both useful, different context. There's another thing called a broken chord. A broken chord is when you just play the parts of the chord separately in any order you want. So you can, or they'll call it picking around a chord or whatever. It's like this. You're just all over the place however you want. You break it up however you want, hence broken chord. There's a type of broken chord called an arpeggio, where the notes are played usually either ascending or descending. So you play them up or down, like, or you get it. A cowboy chord. I actually looked this up because I'm a dork, and it's actually from the sound of like a cowboy strumming away on his guitar on the open range. I don't know how many cowboys carried guitars on their horses. Alas, that's where it comes from. It's usually a lot of open strings, so like kind of traditional, like if you learn acoustic guitar, these are kind of the first chord shapes that you learn. They're called cowboy chords because there's lots of open strings. Cowboy chord. A power chord is one that contains the root note and the fifth note at least, maybe another root note afterwards. Without getting too far into theory, maybe we can do that on another video, or numbers or something like that. But it's the first note, the root, and the fifth note, the five, which would be like this. You hear lots of, big rock music type things. Or you can add another one on top of it, which would be a third one. Power chord. There's another one called a dyad. A die is a prefix that means two, if you're a nerd, and it's just any set of two notes or pitches. And so something like it's a dyad, just anything that contains two notes. You may have heard double stop before. That one really confused me. I looked that one up too, and that one comes from violin players, I think, is where, or like violin-ish instruments maybe is how it originated. So the difference between that and a dyad is that a double stop is two notes that are plucked or strummed or whatever at the same time, which is the difference in that and what we just did. So whereas a dyad could be, and that's not a double stop. A double stop, I think, is a type of dyad, and you do everything together. Or picked. That kind of thing. Double stop. A triad, tri means three, so you guessed it, triad contains three notes or pitches. They're usually in thirds. Again, that's a nerdy thing, like the root, the third, the fifth, or 1, 3, 5 of any chord. So a common one of those would be this one here, 1, 3, 5. they don't have to be that, but any 3 notes or pitches is a type of triad. So where this one is a triad, it's not a power chord because it has a 3 in it, and you usually just wouldn't call that a power chord. But a 3-note power chord, like we played earlier, is also a triad because there's 3 notes in it. And then this is another power chord here. Whoops. That's a 1, a 5, and a 1 also, but that's also a triad because any 3 notes is a triad. Muting or palm muting, when you rest your palm on the edge of your strings, as far back toward the bridge of the guitar, that's another thing, bridge. We'll do another bridge later. We'll come back to that. If you rest your palm down there while you're playing and you leave your palm there, then it gives you this kind of muted sound. You can do it with 1 string. And so that kind of gives you the mute or palm mute because uses your palm. The term bridge can mean 2 different things. One, literally the bridge is this little piece on your guitar. It'll look different. It's the thing toward the back. And then the neck obviously is this thing. But when you hear terms like bridge, neck, and middle, they're usually talking about pickup selection. So like which pickup in your guitar, these are pickups, which one they're talking about. The bridge is the one at the back. It's toward the bridge, and it's the most aggressive sounding of the pickups that you have. The middle, most guitars have a pickup selector switch like this thing here that chooses bridge because it's at the back, middle, which is both together, or neck, which is the one up here towards the neck. So where the bridge is aggressive, the middle is more mellow, and the neck is usually more mellow still. There's a lot of variety in the types of pickups, and occasionally you'll get a guitar that has 5 positions instead, so it may have 3 pickups. So you'll have the back one alone, back and middle, middle alone, middle and front, front alone, or neck and bridge, as I should have said, because that's the whole point of this whole thing. Then you have a bend. A bend is instead of moving from one note to another note, or plucking or sliding or whatever, you bend the note into the next note. So I start on this note and I just bend it until upward or downward, whatever, until it gets up to the next note. So that's different. And you can bend, that's bending what's called half a step that's a good one, step. I'm coming up with some as we go. Step is like it's like an interval between notes. And so every fret, that's another one, fret. A fret is each one of these lined areas on your guitar, and each fret is a half a step musically. And so if I'm moving from this note to this note for a bend, and I bend it, I'm bending half a step. Let's say I wanted to bend from this note to this note. That's a whole step, because it's 2 halves, and 2 halves make a whole, if you know math. So you can also bend that far. You could bend a whole step. Just takes a little more work. You could also bend like a step and a half if you wanted to. You can bend as far as your fingers and the gauge of your strings will allow you to bend. A double bend, at least as far as I can tell, is not bending 2 strings at once, because that's pretty difficult to do. Not impossible, but difficult. But that's like where you take the note you're going to on one string and then you bend another string starting lower than that note until you get there. So like, let's say here's where I want to go. That's the note I want to end up at. I'll come down here. Those notes don't go well together, but you can bend one into the other one, like hold the note you want to go to in place and then bend the other string around it. And when you put on a lot of like overdrive or fuzz or something and you do that, it sounds awesome. Vibrato. Vibrato is kind of when you make a, for lack of a better term, you make a note shake. You make it kind of, or vibrate. I guess that's way better than shake. There's a couple ways to do that. One would be you can just, as you push down on the note, you just move your finger at the same time. It's good for a really fast type thing. You can also kind of rotate your finger. You can do it with any finger. Up and down. Rotating. You hear it a lot. It adds a lot of interesting character to parts. So that's how much vibrato. It can be fast or slow. It doesn't really matter. That's vibrato. So that's a bunch of terms. If that is useful to you and you would like to know more terms, write them in the comments and say, what is this? Or you could just Google. But, you know, if you want to hear me explain it instead, then do that. Hit subscribe if you want more videos like this or any of the other videos that are up. See you later.